After the Reconstruction in the late 1800s, African Americans in Arkansas had a host of economic challenges, including inequities of sharecropping, political strengths, and poverty. There were only a limited number of banks willing to lend money to African Americans to start businesses. Cooperative movements like fraternal and self-help organizations became the source for blacks to find equity. According to the Mosaic Templars Museum records, in the early 19th century, the number of black fraternal lodges surpassed the number of white fraternal lodges. Little Rock had 2 lodges per 1,000 African Americans versus 1.82 lodges for whites. The most acclaimed African American fraternal organization in the country was the Mosaic Templars. This Little Rock Institute became one of the largest black business enterprises in the United States. The inception of this group came from a conversation John Bush, Templar founder, had with a white man.
But the Mosaic Templars of America, it started like I said, around late 18th century, late 1800s, and primarily to give African Americans the opportunity to be buried with dignity. There's a story surrounding that the founder, Johnny Bush, was having a conversation with a white gentleman, and this black lady approached him, and she said she needed money for one of her relatives to be buried. And the white gentleman said to him, your people, they spend all their money, they spend all their wares, and when they die, they can't afford to bury themselves with dignity. And so Johnny Bush said, I want to change that. And so as time went on, they did change it. And they began to offer these burial policies, which also you were given a headstone as a part of this policy. And the organization grew from about a few members here in Little Rock, Arkansas, to over 200,000 members across the country and the West Indies, with one surviving chapter in Barbados.
The Mosaic Templars founders, John E. Bush and Chester Keats, pooled their funds, opened up an office, and started advertising to solicit membership for this insurance agency. For an annual fee of less than 50 cents, each deceased member was provided a marble gravestone. The responses to the advertising came from Little Rock, Devall's Bluff, Prescott, Sweet Home, and several other Arkansas towns. By May 24, 1883, they collected enough dues to incorporate and receive an official charter from the state of Arkansas. In the official history of the Mosaic Templars of America, authors A. E. Bush and P. L. Dorman recorded the parallels between the story of Moses, who led the children of Israel from the Pharaoh of Egypt, to eventual freedom and prosperity in a new land. This inspired many members, since the organization only started 17 years after the end of slavery in the United States.
Their motto that's on the crest of Mosaic Templars, the emblem, is I saw, I came, I conquered. And for men of this time who was not one generation removed from slavery, but really they were former slaves, to have this attitude regarding social justice, regarding equity and equality, economic, political progress, was absolutely phenomenal.
The Templars were early adapters of equality for men and women. The Mosaic Templars first operated as a traditional fraternal order. Both men and women were inducted through secret initiations. According to History of the Mosaic Templars, its founders and officials, the laws that governed fraternal organizations required separate businesses set up for men and women. The separate lodges, known as chambers, were set up for the two sexes. After the divide, several women were given the opportunity to serve on the National Committee of Management. At the turn of the century, if an African American needed medical help, they went to a segregated facility, and African American physicians could not perform any treatment in a hospital unless they obtained a white associate signature. This unbalanced authority stimulated the Mosaic Templars to open up the Mosaic State Hospital in the 1920s. Another venture the Mosaic Templars started was a form of ROTC for young people. African Americans at that time were excluded from Southern State Armed Forces. The Uniform Rank Department performed at parades and became a regular feature of National Grand Lodge meetings. Although this attracted more young men, a women's auxiliary unit was also set up.
The Mosaic Templars of America members, leaders, faced numerous challenges, mainly on the political front. The 1905 separate school tax bill was one of those issues because African Americans were mainly spending money to fund various projects in the state that did not benefit them, various initiatives or what have you.
Co-founder John Bush had become a predominant political figure in Little Rock. He defeated this bill by warning that a mass exodus of African Americans from Arkansas would happen if the tax was put into effect. He did this by publishing a letter in the Democrat Gazette. He addressed the letter to the senators and representatives of the General Assembly. stating Arkansas would lose its labor force if the tax was passed. Since the Civil War, Arkansas farmers wanted to retain the black labor force, and this letter was one of the driving forces that ended the tax. This action illustrates how African Americans were starting to have political power in Arkansas. The Mosaic Templars thrived because of its economic success. During World War I, President Wilson asked states to conduct war bond rallies. William Gibbs McAdoo, the Secretary of Treasury, was amazed when the Mosaic Templars gave him $50,000 and promised to raise another $50,000. The Mosaic Templars purchased a total of $125,000 worth to support the nation during this wartime. In 1913, the Mosaic Templars of America built a new headquarters at the southwest corner of Broadway and West 9th Street in Little Rock. At the time, it was one of the largest buildings in the state's capital. The three-story building included shops, offices, and entertainment. On the top floor, an auditorium became a community center for African Americans. Plays, concerts, and early motion picture shows were only a part of the room's functions. On October 13, 1913, a former slave, Booker T. Washington, who also founded Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute in the Black Belt of Alabama, participated in the opening ceremonies of the Mosaic Templars building in this grand room. However, the prosperity of the Mosaic Templars did not last. According to the History of Mosaic Templars of America, in 1918 there were 33 separate African American fraternal insurance providers in Arkansas. But by 1931, the number plummeted to 10. By 1937, only 2 remained. The Great Depression in the late 1920s caused the Mosaic Templars to close their doors.
So here we stand today. The building, the original structure, was destroyed by fire in 2005. So the present structure we have is kind of like the phoenix that's risen from the ashes. And it not only tells the story of the Mosaic Templars of America, but tells the broader story of African Americans in the state of Arkansas.
Juwan Johnson credits the Mosaic Templars as forefathers to the civil rights movement.
During the civil rights, of course, the Mosaic Templars, when I think of civil rights, I think it starts a whole lot. The movement began well before the 1960s, but that was the watershed moment that brought about a major cultural shift in America. But these men were kind of paving the way, not only men, but let's say women as well.
To Juwan Johnson, keeping the Mosaic Templars history alive has been and will be encouragement for future generations.
Like I said, this museum is not only testament of what the racial possibilities were, what your possibilities were as a person during that time, with so many challenges, so many strikes against you, if you will, but and that they made it. So we're passing down this heritage, this legacy, not only to African American children, but all children and all people across the state, that if these people could make it, despite their circumstances, despite being in an environment that was politically, that was economically against them, they thrived, and so can you. So that's mainly the main purpose that we serve as an educational institution.
The Mosaic Templars grew from a few people to over 200,000 members across the United States, West Indies, and Barbados. These pioneer men and women from Arkansas were and still are some of the greatest champions of racial and economic equality for African Americans in the United States.